Oh, that's kind of like sucking up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's called a Codell.
Mr. Secretary, do you have a hard
Something I've never heard from South Dakota, by the way, but I appreciate that.
I didn't say South Dakota. I said North Dakota.
I know all the bird hunters in Idaho that used to hunt pheasant now go to North Dakota. Do you have a hard stop?
I do not.
I think there's a few more questions that most of us would like to ask. Let me ask a couple, and I don't know if they're really questions. I guess they are. Skinny budget proposes a $1.2 billion cut to the National Park Service. Of that cut, $900 million is for the operations and maintenance of the 433 national park units across the country. To justify this reduction, the skinny budget says that you are going to shift the responsibility of managing some of these units to the states. Are we going to see a list of the parks that we are considered transferring to the states, and have we been in contact with any governors to see what they think about this?
First, let me make a clarification, which is there's, I think, zero intention of transferring any actual national parks. I mean, the 64 crown jewels that we have, there's zero thought about that. Okay. But what is little well known is that there is over 400 other locations that the National Park Service manages. These could be a birthplace of a president, like Theodore Roosevelt, right, in the middle of New York City. That's just a standalone building that also needs deferred maintenance and repair. It could be a battlefield site someplace. It could be, again, these are places that people would be shocked to find out are managed by the National Park Service, because they're not thought of as being part of the national parks. So I think the intention of the budget proposal is that Interior, working with you, would take a look at all of this and say, hey, are some of these things that are barely visited in remote locations that require all the overhead of federal government? They want to do a project, they've got to go through all the federal contracting, you have to do all these things that they have to do, puts a huge burden on these small, places, many of them which have no ability even to charge admission. Right. I mean, so they're just cost centers is what they are. And I know from that some of these existed in North Dakota, and as governor, we might have said, hey, if you want to, turn over the, Knife River Indian Village's archaeological site to the state of North Dakota, it would fit super well inside of this. And we might then say, hey, we could also, we could put some resources. This would be a great place. We could add a campground. We could add resources. It's close to another state park. We could do all this. So I think it's, again, a case by case basis, but this would be taking a look at that, the tail end of the curve on things, because I think there has been an accumulation over time of, hey, can we get, and whether it's a powerful person in Congress that says, hey, I want this thing to be a federal resource, is not, for all the priorities we've talked about here, whether it's, wildland or BIE or law enforcement, whatever. I mean, these cost centers are all cutting into the ability to do that, and I don't think I think they could be well served, sometimes better served from a budget standpoint, working with our states in partnership, as Representative Malloy was talking about. I mean, hey, let's work together and find out where's the best place for us to put some of that. So that would, if it's in the budget, it's going to have to start with a process that hasn't even been initiated yet, to take a look at what would be possible and who would be interested, because we don't want to hand over resources to states that aren't going to take care of stuff. But some people might say, yeah, we'd love that.
Every year since I've been in Congress, there's always been proposals that to do something, some historic site or whatever, and they want the National Park Service to take care of it. And we just keep expanding what is under the control of the National Park Service, which is a concern. But the crown jewels are the crown jewels. And as we said in your office, let's not screw up our national parks, because that's something the American people will never forgive us for.
Yeah.
One other question.
Can I offer one other piece on this, which is related? I mean, we're building a presidential library, and I say we because the state of North Dakota was involved in providing part of the initial incentive, but it's a private sector opportunity. They're building a presidential library for Theodore Roosevelt at the entrance to Theodore Roosevelt National Park, the only park that's named after an individual out of the 64 crown jewel parks. That project has raised over $300 million of private capital, through a brand new foundation, and we have other foundations that are raising all kinds of money. Theodore Roosevelt's birthplace was operated by a foundation until, as you just described, somewhere, 30 years ago, someone says, oh, the Park Service should take it over. Well, when the Park Service took it over, that's when the deferred maintenance started to occur. That's when the underfunding started to occur. That's when people stopped holding events in that house that would have been revenue generating and doing all that. And, those folks that are working there, they could be working for a foundation. I mean, I just was toured there a couple of weeks ago. There are people there that worked there for 30 years. They know everything you need to know. They're amazing. Great. Let them have them work for a foundation. And so it's not just states, but in the right cases where we've got, Gettysburg. Gettysburg battlefield, right in the middle of that battlefield, there's a carve out of private land, and that's a private foundation that built that $100 million visitor center. There's never going to be money from the federal government to build that, but now they've got an amazing thing. So if we want to tap into the private sector dollars, there's also an opportunity on the historic sites, not parks, but on the historic sites to get people that care deeply about some of these places to get private sector partnerships going deeper than we have.
Okay. As you know, the 25 fiscal year budget was the last year of funding for the Legacy Restoration Fund, which was created by the Great American Outdoors Act that President Trump signed into law during his first term. The purpose of the fund is to address priority deferred maintenance needs in all public lands, but especially the National Park Service. The first 5 years of the Legacy Restoration Fund is a great investment in tackling this deferred maintenance, but there's still a $23 billion in deferred maintenance across the Park Service. Do you believe the continued investment in addressing these deferred maintenance needs at our parks and public lands should be a priority?
Yes.
Okay.
And I can tell you, just add one piece of color to support your committee's work. We did this in North Dakota across university buildings and state buildings and looked at the whole thing, and we said we got to do a comprehensive assessment of where we are on this deferred maintenance number, because I wanted to ground proof it and make sure it was a real number. But then, as you would know, and then it also, states have got deferred maintenance on roads, right?
Yeah.
And we have them on runways. I mean, so the whole idea across all the spending that occurs with a lot of federal money that flows down through states is it's not how much, but it's when. I mean, when we spend the money to fix a road when it's in stage 3, or a building it's at stage 3, because stage 4 is, it's over the hill and it's going to cost twice as much, got to replace. Stage 5 is I got a hole in the roof that's leaking and the windows are out. But if you come in and you do that deferred maintenance by the tail end of stage 3, you can do it for pennies on the dollar versus when you get into roof replacement or runway replacement. We have to redo the whole thing. So we just come in with, we end up spending all this money and we spend it too late. We got to get on it. We got to get on these things sooner, and we get on them sooner, we'd be able to handle the whole list of projects. But if everything's already fallen into class 4 or class 5 deterioration, then you're just, man, we're wasting the taxpayers' money. So, but it's at some point to get there, you got to step up and say we're gonna solve the problem, and it's either, like I said, either it's private capital, state capital, or us spending money further upstream. But I'm all for deferred maintenance, because deferred maintenance eats you alive when you just keep adding and adding. When you keep adding cost without adding revenue, to these systems.
I've always been a fan of a saying that said, when ideas knock on your door, open the door, invite them in, and treat them royally, for you never know which one will be the king. That's kind of the way it is with the project proposal. There's a lot of proposed changes in here. I'm not going to ask you about wildland firefighting services, but I'm open to the idea. Open to the idea of should the Forest Service actually be in the Department of Interior. It's a question we've debated many times around here, but I want to know more about it, what the advantage is to doing the changes in wildfire fighting that's being proposed in this budget. We'll have this discussion as we move ahead with trying to put a bill together about what's the best way to do it, and are we trying to do it too rapidly before we're seeing how it's going to look down the road. So anyway, I appreciate that.
I would say that Chairman Westerman and Senator Sheehy, Westerman being the only forester that I'm aware of in the entire Congress, and Sheehy, who's come directly from a firefighting background, those two are both been working hard on this idea, and I would encourage the committee to speak with them if they haven't.
Okay. Jim Risch, the senator from Idaho, also has a degree in forestry.
Perfect.
Never practiced it, but he's
good. We got.
Yeah, he's a good guy. Ms. Pingree.